Hi everyone. In 2016, 14-year-old Billie Eilish, a Los Angeles-based dancer and musician, uploaded her first song Ocean Eyes to SoundCloud late one night. The song was written and produced by her older brother Phineas at home. So originally she had only intended the song for her dance teacher, but overnight the song got viral on the streaming platform, and not a long time later she signed her first contract with a record label. And 3 years later she redefined what success is. Let's take a closer look at her body language, what we can read between the lines, what drives her, and see what we can discover. The main part will be a Vanity Fair interview, which has been conducted every year at the same time as a chronicle of her success. Okay, let's get started.
Let's do this shit. Year 3. Y'all been asking for it, so here we are.
Okay, first impressions. Overall, there's relatively little to read in her face, I think, because, she's quite young. Maybe the noticeable thing is her clothes, her baggy clothes. I think it was described somewhere as neo-goth. Not sure exactly what it is. I mean, goth, I guess, used to be black with skulls and chains. Here, instead, to egg on, it seems to use odd color combinations like mustard yellow and some olive green maybe together. And then the dyed green hair and the matching green fingernails. Oof. Interesting. So one purpose of the clothes seems to be to cover up her curves. So she has some insecurities about her body.
So here we are.
My name is Billie Eilish.
Billie Eilish.
My name is Billie Eilish. I think it's October 18th, 2017.
It's October 18th, 2018. October 18th, 2019.
I'm 15.
I'm 16. I'm 17.
I have 257,000.
I have 6.3 million. 40.7 million.
So we see how she progressed over the last 3 years. So when she was 15, she certainly looked super excited. There's no doubt about it. Then when she was 16, I guess she went through some tough year adjusting to her fame. So she's not having such a good time. So she has this dark clothes and the bluish colored hair. So that's one thing. And then her mouth corners go down. So she seems very dismissive about her success. So she's turtling, crouching to the sign. She's not really comfortable in her skin. Her skin is breaking out as well. And there seems to be some worry lines. Now, when she's 17, she looks overall much happier and healthier. Kind of glowing almost. And she says it even later. I guess that's why people thought she might have been pregnant. I have no idea.
That's great. That's so... Can you... Wow. That's crazy.
1.13 million.
9.6 million. 152 million. My skin was so bad. Jesus. Look, I'm glowing now. Yes.
She's glowing, that's for sure.
Most important thing right now, though, probably would be maintaining my happiness, which I've been experiencing for like the first time in many years. I'm very lucky, so I'm
So she has this little tick.
grateful for it, and it's really rare, and it's really I'm very lucky. So
Did you see the mouse corner go down? So whenever she's a little bit embarrassed about something, she goes back with her mouse corner. We see this throughout the interview. She has a few of these little ticks actually.
just taking it for granted, and that makes me really mad, and I don't want to be, and I just was.
Again, did you see the mouse corner going down? So she's not fully comfortable saying certain things sometimes, and that's an expression of that.
Shouldn't that count as your favorite artist? Is an artist that puts out music that you only like? You know what I mean?
Here again, the tick.
I think I'm less confident, actually. True, I was less confident for sure. I was definitely not as confident last year as I was before that. Votes, so the world doesn't end. There's an impeachment going on. Honestly, the news is so bad, I can't even... Oh yeah, Beyonce had some twins. And she still looks fly. Kehlani's pregnant.
Interesting. So 2 years in a row, she talks about artists having kids and being pregnant and so on. So something is on her mind here.
People think I'm pregnant. A lot of people thought I was pregnant for a second. They did think I was pregnant. There was like a story on Snapchat the other day. It was like, wait, did Billie Eilish have a baby? I was like, what?
Okay, here again, the pregnancy thing.
Almost had one for like a little, but it wasn't really exclusive, so I don't know what you call that. I hate things that are exclusive. That's so funny. I don't have a boyfriend! I actually did then, but I don't now. For the first time in my life, I don't feel the need to be.
Okay, here's these rosy cheeks, so she seems to be glowing.
First time in my life. I don't have my eyes on anyone. I'm not in the mood. I don't have enough stamina for it right now. And I'm totally fine with that. So, who knows? I'm open to it.
So she seems to be another case of self-partnering, so she's fine being alone. What she said in the end, that she's open to it, this little after sentence, I wouldn't say she's open to it. She's too close to her family. No one has a chance. There's no piece of paper fitting between her and her mom or her brother. We will come back to this.
I think the month of May, probably mid-May, I was in a horrible place mentally. So, when a friend of mine died in June, it's pretty bad.
So it's quite unusual at her age to have a friend die, so I don't know anything about the story. So most likely she's drawn to certain types of sorrow and misery, and that's why she's in a situation where she has a friend who died. So I don't think this is sort of random how we pick people. So it's a little bit a self-fulfilled prophecy.
I've like kind of accomplished
Against a tick with her mouth.
not taking it for granted. I've been really grateful for everything and really aware lately, and
Okay, these are very good terms, aware and grateful.
I just was realizing that I was giving too much of myself to other people's lives and to other people's situations. And
so after she said she's giving too much or she gave too much to other people, she covers her mouth. So here she was maybe saying a little bit too much, something she didn't want to say. And that's why she's silencing herself with her hand.
I was like, you know what? I need this attention on me right now. So, yeah. Fruitvale Station. Fruitvale Station. Fruitvale Station.
It's also very interesting. 3 years in a row, she mentions the same favorite movie, Fruitvale Station. So I don't know anything about this movie, but just looking for a second, it seems to be some heartbreaking story about some black kid being shot by the police in San Francisco and sort of the protests which came out of it afterwards. So what we like, what motivates us is really shaped by experiences of the past, and this means also the whole family history, and in particular dramatic events. And often these things are hidden, these dynamics, but then they break out in terms of motivation, what drives us, what kind of movies we like, what books we like to read.
On me, but I don't feel the pressure. You know what I mean? I feel it less now that it's bigger in a way.
Very good answer.
It's like performing in front of 80,000 people is way easier than performing in front of 8 people.
Very good words, very good answers. Let's move on.
And when they finally let go, I like fell on top of this fucking thing. And then somebody saw.
So there's another of her tics. So she touches her mouth or her nose like that.
Fucking thing. And then.
So it's like she wipes her nose somehow. So that gesture she does also quite a lot. Also, I don't think she's wiping her nose. So that's just some tick she has.
My brother's my best friend. My brother's my best friend. My best friend is Phineas. But he is also my brother.
So again, this is one of these other things which are consistent in her life. She's best friends with her brother. So again, this is a very tight family, in particular with her brother. Another defining hallmark of Billie Eilish.
A moment, please.
So now the mom comes into the interview, and that happened in all the previous Vanity Fair interviews.
A moment, please.
I slowed it down.
This is my mom.
She doesn't look very healthy. You can see very well the whites of her eye. That could be a sign of depression, a sign of loss, or even instability. And this asymmetric face reflects that she's pulled into different directions. That's her private side. The left side of her face is determined by the right side of her brain. This is the emotional side, and the left side, which is covered up, it's more the public side, which is determined by the left hemisphere of her brain. This is more the logical thinking side. Often we see the left side of the face going down. This is often a sign of loss and disappointment, personal difficulties.
Sick as a booty. I don't mind. I can stay here that long.
The speech is kind of slurred, again indicating that there might be some health issues.
I love it. I love it too. Next year, I hope you're very, very happy.
Again, the issue of happiness is coming up. Just the fact to mention it a lot might mean that she's not happy, and that's like another signature of depression. What is also noticeable is that she hugs her quite strongly, almost like choking her. That seems to be a sign of desperation. So she seems more like a drowning person holding onto a straw, but the straw is her daughter, so that puts a lot of pressure on her.
and that your happiness you have this year continues and only grows.
Again, still this choking hold. Also, the kissing of the hair is quite unusual. Normally, we don't kiss the hair, we kiss the skin.
You have everything you want in life, and you help change the world.
And she has this childlike voice. And also these cheesy goals like change the world, her mom's desperation projected onto her child. And that's potentially a driver, but it's probably not a healthy one in the long run. And the closeness makes it very hard for Billie to find her own partners in life. The mother seems to be always in the interviews, but this is also what I meant earlier. So Billie and her success cannot be looked in isolation. This is often wrongly portrayed when people talk about famous child actors or child prodigies. And here I'm coming back to Bert Hellinger's psychoanalysis, who views individuals as part of a family system with influences from the past shaping the present generation. And I think with these creative kids and these so-called old souls, there are a lot of these influences from the past. In particular, her mom, I think, was an immigrant child from Ireland. Then a lot of these past influences from these different continents even are funneled into these children, and they have these strong influences from very many directions. They become very creative. Immigration often means leaving things behind from the past, and often the children then feel a strong affiliation with the country of origin, some sort of loyalty. And that can lead also to learning difficulties like dyslexia. That might also be one of the motivations, I think, for the homeschooling.
You don't have to be in love to write a song about being in love, and you don't have to hate someone to write a song about hating someone. It's just fun to put yourself in a place that you would not be otherwise.
That's the whole thing with the family background and the family influences and what people mean when they say old soul. Young kids can have these strong feelings about love and loss and so on, even if they haven't experienced these. They're just sort of funneled through them from the past. And it could also have to do with the past left behind in the countries they emigrated from.
I was just a kid who had a lot of time to focus on things that I wanted to focus on, which was kind of part of the homeschooling and the reason that we homeschooled.
So here we learn a little bit more about the background, how she grew up.
Just allow them to have this creative life.
We had actor, musician parents. They always nurtured such a sense of creativity in us.
This short sequence says it all. So people often consider these child prodigies in isolation, like, oh, surprisingly, the child is so good at something. But of course, it's completely integrated. Lots of time at home, say creativity at home, pianos everywhere, music instruments everywhere. So this whole setup, of course, leads to this outcome. And this is often what people forget. So there are a lot of interesting things already. We have to back up for a second.
Just allow them to have this creative life.
We see the mom's desperation and the expression of fear in her face. So that's from her past somehow, something. And he looks also shy, so this is a signature of shame. So he doesn't look very confident. And I don't see so much a father role in him.
We had actor, musician parents. They always nurtured such a sense of creativity in us.
So that's Phineas. So he seems much more confident than the dad. When I see the dad, I don't feel dad. And when I see the brother, I don't feel brother. So he seems to be much more in this family than the brother of Billie. He seems to be the sane anchor in this family.
Currency of the family is music and dance and move. We just let our life be driven by their passions and by
Okay, that's an important statement.
what Billie was interested in. At 6 years old, she told us she wanted to sing in a talent show. She said, oh, I know what I want to sing. I want to sing Happiness is a Warm Gun.
So again, the issue of happiness. So one of the drivers of Billie seems to be making her mom happy.
We were like, what?
She was completely comfortable and loved it.
I joined the choir when I was 8, mainly because my brother was in it.
Again,
and I
the
thought that was
brother.
really cool.
This became a home for her.
Billie was always so fascinated with digital cameras. She would go out into the yard and take all these pictures.
Make music videos to
random songs that I liked.
Okay, again, very early starting with making music videos even.
There's a lot of feelings that are really universal, and even though Billie is only 15 now, and that might limit your life experience, I think there's so many sort of emotions that everyone...
So he's trying to justify or rationalize how she has these experiences to write about certain things despite her young life. Again, these influences come from the past, which shape us. This is generally not understood well.
For me, something that used to help a lot with depression and just anything was dance and moving.
So very early in her life, there's the issue of depression mentioned. The family systemic interpretation is that it's either a loss of a connection with the parents, so the love is not flowing. It might only be superficially that there's this very strong connection between her mom and her, or strong depression might have a much deeper reason. It might be an old loss in the family. Someone has died and someone tries to follow this dead person. There's a lot of these dynamics in families, which can also lead to suicide.
I had music. If I didn't have music, everything would be so bad. I just want my music to get in people's heads, and if like you feel that way, then...
So again, there's these strong influences which shape her, and they need an outlet, and the music and creativity is that outlet.
Would say to me, like, what do you want me to play? And I'd say, I just want you to sing. Just want you to sing for me.
So again, she's trying to make her mom happy. The singing for her mom was very important, and that became the story of her life in the end.
You hear the music and you hear the songs and the productions, you don't think this is coming from, at the time, a 13-year-old kid.
Here again, the issue, where does she get her life experiences to write these songs? These are old feelings which just bubble up in her. So again, the expression of an old soul you have in this context. So these might even be things which happened in Ireland and sort of building up in her and being expressed in her. She's giving these things a voice.
I feel so incredibly lucky to get to...
Interesting in the songs that they're singing about, I'm so scared. And we saw the expression of fear in the mom's face. Well, that's a theme in the family, I think.
So this is the house I grew up in. We only have like a 2-bedroom house, and there's 4 people in it. Instead of making me and Billie share a room growing up, our parents just sleep on a futon in the living room, which is really nice of them. That was kind of how our house felt growing up. We grew up with like 3 pianos in the house. Having music in every nook and cranny of that house was really important to me.
So again, music everywhere. The whole house, the whole family set up to do music. This is the only things they do. Again, if anyone is surprised that a child turns out that way, here you see the evidence. And the whole house looks more like a pirate ship. So somehow the parents secluded themselves completely. They're kind of awkward. They're living in their little dream world, and they're homeschooling their kids. They have lots of time, and this is what comes out of this little bubble. And actually, Billie's middle name is Pirate. So this is the whole mindset of the parents. Them against the rest of the world. Them drifting on a wild ocean. Again, maybe it's the Irish connection.
Recorded pretty much every vocal for the entire album sitting on my bed, like with her legs crossed. It's kind of insane. Living in LA, making music, being homeschooled, having time in the day to...
So it's all about the time and the hours you put in. And the parents even wrote this on the frame of the door. So that's a 10,000 hour rule. So that's in a book by Malcolm Gladwell. He's a great writer. And he describes that the success requires putting in roughly 10,000 hours in any field. And he goes through child prodigies, from chess players to musicians, who find evidence for this. So even with Mozart, who seems to come up with his abilities by himself, he finds evidence that he did put in the time, the dedication. So effectively, this is just a matter of what people call talent. Is really a matter of putting in the work hours. If you put in 20 hours of work a week, that roughly corresponds to 10 years. And of course, if you have more time, like in homeschooling, then you can put even more time in it and you can accelerate this process. Of course, just putting in the time itself doesn't matter. It's really also the motivation to stick with it, to pay attention, to be driven. The motivation is the key thing as well. But the funny thing is that the parents are aware of it, and it's even written on the door. So that's not really a coincidence, I think.
Make all that music. It was just this gift that I was given of sort of time and resources.
Time and resources. Okay, so in summary, I think these strong family influences, especially immigrating from Ireland, can lead to this old soul effect, where all this stuff is bundled into a few children, and this leads to huge creativity and these influences which go beyond their own life experiences, and that can then lead to this artistic life and the success. Because of these strong events in the past, I think there's also a lot of depression and fear in this family, and again, this music is a kind of therapeutic outlet to deal with that. So the brother has a very big influence in this family. He seems to be the stable anchor, the sane person, while the parents are very kooky. It's also very difficult for Billie to have close relationships with other people, in particular male figures, because the connection to her mom and her brother is so tight. There's no piece of paper fitting between them. So that will make it very hard for her to form strong connections in relationships. And no one will have a chance, basically, because of these dynamics. Okay, so I hope you liked my analysis, and yeah, talk to you next time. Bye.